Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners. This is Komenza Radio Africa. The mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. That is our philosophy. We inform and entertain. We develop and educate. We empower and support. We associate and network. That is our idea. We are a business and professional management services 24/7 internet streaming radio station. We broadcast music and talk shows across the world. Our objective is to use the African storytelling and Lekgotla conversation methodology in offering career coaching, education and learning guidance, continuous professional development, enterprise and entrepreneurship development, and connecting supply to demand. Our talk shows aim to affirm and support business professionals and entrepreneurs in their personal and professional journey of bringing difference to the world. These are talk shows that recognize excellence and greatness. Professionals and entrepreneurs are invited as recognition of their great contribution that they are making to humanity. I have with me at this point my sister Maggie Mojapelo. Greetings, my sister. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and you? How are you, Sam?
We're doing very well. We're getting used to our new ways of life and business under the COVID-19. I hope you have coped very well and your clients are safe.
Yeah, no, it's been, we call it the new normal.
Yes.
I think I was saying to someone, coming out of a corporate world that used to operate internationally, it just became so easy to transition. And I think it has been really a very interesting journey, especially during this COVID-19, to watch businesses that are struggling and businesses that just jump ship and realize that we don't have, if we want to survive, we don't have an excuse, but to embrace this and move on.
I think you and I, in our life, we have never been exposed to something like this. We read a lot about the World War and many other things. We never thought something so scary will happen like this.
I know. I mean, really, this thing, if I remember December, the way we were so excited, especially the 31st of last year, everybody was looking forward. I still have WhatsApps, messages from different people really looking forward for this brilliant year. Little did we know that within 3 months down the line, we are going to find ourselves being confused by a little thing called coronavirus. Yes, it looks little, yet so big. All of us as a country, as the world, we are really being confused by this little virus that is really, really impacting on the world big time. So it's really a huge surprise for all of us. And I think, amazingly, I was listening to the owner of Microsoft when he spoke about the virus many years ago before it happened. I mean, he spoke about this 5 years ago. And I think because he's a very IT innovative guy, it was easy for him to just say, if we get something that is airborne, it's going to be not easy to control it. And he was very right.
Yeah.
He was very right.
Yeah. And it has changed our perspective of life, yeah?
Yeah, no, definitely. It has changed. I think, it's just said that other people financially and economically, I think it's definitely causing damage there. However, on the other side, it has really made us to go to the basics. I mean, we really now appreciate the little things around us. We're not even appreciating wealth. We're no longer even thinking about the next money for the next years. We are just now focusing on if I can just survive this for the next weeks, next month. If life has just gone back to the basics where you and I we were raised. So that's what I appreciate about this moment. It's how much it has humbled us, all of us, regardless of who you are.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there are some lessons to take, and I hope the future is going to be redirected in a way that it's accommodating to everybody.
I mean, if you remember the past few years, everybody has been busy. How many times you and I tried to meet, but it was impossible.
Yeah.
And some of us, you've got a home, but you don't even know what's happening in that house.
Yeah.
And I found during this time, we started, all of us in the house, we appreciate what's in the house, in our houses. I mean, I remember seeing a new dish that I've never thought I had it. So it was like I was saying to my husband, look, I have this. But I promise you, it took me to stay in the house because of COVID to know what I had in my house.
Wow.
So I'm not sure if it wasn't for COVID, would I have ever known that I have something that I had bought some time ago in this house? I don't think that would have happened.
Sure. Amazing stuff. Yeah. So I want us to talk a little bit about Maggie Mojapelo. You and I, we know each other, but we have never really gone back and talk about how was it like growing up in the Sekhukhune region. We're both coming from Sekhukhune region. Obviously, we didn't meet each other there. We met each other professionally here in Gauteng. And we have always been intending to have some coffee and just talk about it. When you think about it, I grew just down the road from you. I grew up down the road from you.
Yes.
Tell our listeners who is Maggie, where was Maggie born, what did you grow up doing?
You know, I tell a lot of people that if you were asked which stage of your life would you want to reverse to, I definitely would want to go back to my childhood years. As you have already said, my name is Maggie Mojapelo, but before I became Mojapelo, I was Maggie Ratau.
Varatau Bajin first.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, I was Maggie Ratau. Born initially before we moved to Limpopo, to Sekhukhune land, which is Jenfest, where you come from.
Yeah.
I grew up at a little village called Maswiakae.
Maswiakae got Glen-Cowie.
Yes.
Gamuchaji.
Yes, but with us, you had to go a little bit further down. There was a river called Wariti.
Yeah.
So we had to cross that river. Just about a kilometer from that river, there was my little home. I think, if I remember the houses, actually I was counting them.
Yeah.
I mean, the families that were there, we were not more than 20.
Yeah.
We knew each other very, very well.
Yeah.
I was born and bred there. I left that village when I was doing grade 7 because what you call Form 1. I went to Guardian Angels College.
Wow, you went to Guardian, the famous Guardian.
Yes. But maybe just to talk about a little bit of my life at Maswiakae. I was born and raised by two beautiful parents, my father and my mother. I tell people that I'm my father's baby girl up to date. I lost my dear father. I wish he was listening, but I hope wherever he is, he's listening. So my father,
yeah,
was a migrant laborer. But somehow my father never went to school because he was an orphan. Never went to school. His mother died when he was 7 years old. And you can imagine many years ago, if you lose a father, a mother, you're not different to an orphan. Yeah, so my grandfather married another wife, and I don't think she really looked after my father and my aunt and my uncles, because there were three, and my father was the eldest. My father apparently ran and went to somewhere past Nebo. That's where his aunt used to stay, Mamogolwaga.
Yes.
I know in English when you say aunt, it's similar to Mani,
Yes.
but I'm talking about Mamogolo, the elder sister to my dad's mother. And since then, he never went to school. Apparently, he only went to school for 4 months. That was it. But my father from there ran away, went to Johannesburg. I think he left with someone. Then he started working at some hotel, cleaning a hotel. Then he left that hotel. He worked for 6 months also. He left, and then he became an entrepreneur. So remember, many years ago, there were hostels.
Yes.
So what my father would do, apparently he would wait at the gate with a tape and measure everybody, and went to the next tailor and make sure that he get all their trousers done. And then Friday, when they get their wages, he stand again at the gate and make them pay. That's how he started his business many, many years ago. How he thought about that, coming from a very, very previously disadvantaged background, I wouldn't tell you. And that, for me, it's something that every day when I think about it, it just makes me want to wake up and run when I think about my. So before I tell you more about my dad, and then I'm the firstborn out of a family of 7, and my mother somehow was just this hardworking woman. I mean, my mother, it's amazing. She was the only woman in that village that was working at Gobarumeng. So she was a tailor, so they were doing, I think, things for the hospital, because you remember the missionaries came and created work for the women around.
Yes, there were even farms around there. The Romans, I remember the Mola, there was a football club called Porto Roman Rangers.
Yes,
that was named after the Romans from Glen-Cowie that looked after them.
And we used to steal those things. I'm going to tell you that we used to steal them a lot. But I mean, it's sad when I'm thinking about it now. But for us, it sounded like life as usual.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there's anything wrong. But before that, so my mother, I had a helper. I only realized now that actually, since I grew up at home, there was a helper. But I never knew that she was a helper. Because if we do something wrong, all of us will get a hiding in the house. Wow. So there was no difference between someone who is working and someone who is not working. And she used to go to school with us. She used to work with us. We used to work together. So I think I was privileged because I regard myself as a privileged somebody because I experienced, the old life where there was no electricity, where there was no gas, all what we knew.
You're talking about, I can relate that you're talking about the place. When you say Maswiakae, those who know those days, that was really a deep rural.
Yes, very rural, but amazing life. Amazing life. I mean, we knew each other as neighbors. We shared with everything together. I remember Semp, Semp that we eat at home.
Yeah.
We didn't buy it in the shop. So there was one house that had that manual machine where you make your own Semp. And then there was another house, if you want Mbaula. I don't know what you call it in English, Mbaula.
Yeah.
Because I didn't bother myself to remember what it's called.
So we can just call it an African stove.
Yeah, an African stove. Yeah. So if you have Malasha, that time you go and take it. Those that don't have Malasha, don't do. So it just went around the whole village. So anyone who had something, it was for all of us. It was never meant for one house. We never we shared, all of us. And if you do something wrong and another mother can see you, it was almost like your mother is watching you. That's how much I grew up. And
do you know why? Do you know why that place? Do you know why your place is called Maswiakae?
Up to now, I don't know, but I know
I actually used to. I said Ga-Mphahlele. It's not Ga-Mphahlele. Ga-Mphahlele.
Yes.
Yeah, and that Ga-Mphahlele had cattle, and he was providing milk for the whole area.
Oh yes, I think someone did share the story, but sometimes when people share stories, when we were still young, we didn't appreciate these things.
Yes.
Now as you grow up, I appreciate to understand the meaning of everything that is really around me.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And I'm gonna write
and who was Glen-Cowie?
I don't remember. It was Glen and Cowie. I think it was two names.
Yeah.
Was it not two names?
I think it's a name and the Thursday, but I think the missionaries, when they came there, same as Jane First. Jane First was a sister.
Yes, I remember. Jane First, I remember a bit.
Yeah, it was a nursing sister called Jane, and her name was First. I think she was Scottish. And
yes,
apparently that's how Jane First began. But Glen-Cowie also, remember it was a missionary, a hospital, and the schools and the farms. And I think Glen must have been one of the missionaries. But anyway, it is important that I'm sure some people who are from there who are listening, they will tell us much better story. But I know Ndate Mojapelo, he was the farmer there that provided milk. And then they just called place Maswiakae. When they come in and ask for milk, and then they say Maswiakae, and then it became Maswiakae.
So I think really, where was I now? I mean, this story is so interesting. You are asking me for something that I'm very passionate about.
Your upbringing.
My childhood life is amazing.
Is
so,
it?
Coming from Maswiakae, I was not far from the people that were staying right in the mission. So my best friends, actually even today, she's still my best friend, Matsebe, came from the mission itself. They were very close to the mission. So, Ga-Mphahlele, Kabela, if you know them, Masemola, they were people. Their parents were teachers, so they were very close to the mission. Yeah. So that's why my mother somehow happened to be part of those women who were in the mission. And then with that, I also became very close to my friends. Were very much from the mission. So the influence of Roman, it's something I grew up with.
Wow.
My parents were ZCC, but I was a staunch Roman for the many years that I went to school at Glen-Cowie. So I did my primary school at Sivianing Primary School. I loved the school. We played. Very clever girl.
What is the name of the school?
Sivianing Primary School.
Oh, yes.
Yes, the one is the main and is the first primary around Glen-Cowie.
Yes.
And then up to standards, what we used to call standard 5 then, which is grade, but they call it grade 7 now, if I'm not mistaken. Then, because I came from a ZCC school, it wasn't easy for me first year to go into Guardian. So Guardian, one of the prerequisites, you had to be a Roman.
Yes.
So that's the reason why then I went to a school called Machumani, not far from Sivianing.
Ga-Mphahlele Machumani.
Yes, I was the first student of Machumani.
Wow.
When Machumani started. It started same time as it. And then when I was there, my principal was called Mr. Nchabele, very tall guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the first person I saw wearing a regalia.
Wow.
He came one day to school wearing a regalia. I don't know what was happening at school. I was so inspired. You can imagine a tall guy wearing that black gown with a black head. I followed him. I went to his office and I said, how do you get this thing? He just said to me, Maggie, you must study hard. So I didn't even imagine, Sam, what it meant when he says you must study hard. What does that really mean? I did not even understand after studying hard what's going to happen. But, I mean, the following year, my father, then I started attending Roman Catholic rituals, and then I was baptized, then received the Holy Spirit, and then I was suddenly admitted to come and study at Guardian. But
so tell me, Maggie, just out of interest, so your parents remained ZCCs and you became Roman Catholic? Yes,
wow. Because they wanted me to go to my father wanted me in Guardian, nowhere else. So I had to, even though they didn't like it, but they had to allow it so that I can really be admitted at Guardian Angels College. And I was admitted, and then I had to repeat grade standard 8, which was called Form 1. I had to do Form 1 again.
Wow.
But I was not unhappy. I was comfortable.
It was a very good school.
Oh, it was a very, very good school. I mean, we were taught by white people before anyone. I tell people that I went to a multiracial, even if I didn't know my English very well. I was very comfortable to just be in a class where the maths teacher is white, the Afrikaans teacher is white. We had a sister that was Afrikaans, but I know that he did not last as a nun. He got married and he's got children. It was amazing to see. It was a surprise for us to see someone who speaks Afrikaans becoming a nun. Because most of the nuns that we had in the country, they were coming outside South Africa. They were all mostly European.
Let me tell you, for the us growing up, for the us villagers growing around the Glen-Cowie, what we use when they say Guardian, what we used to think of.
Yeah.
Every time you say Guardian, they say, "Whoa, they are so strict there."
No, they were.
You were apparently you were given time. If you go out, you are given time when to come back.
So I didn't tell you something. So I'm already starting go high school, and I saw which my childhood life. So
yes.
Maybe just too quick because that's very important. I tell you that.
Let's go back there.
Yes. So my mother grew up from. My mother and my father come from a very good big families. And my mother's side, my mother's grandfather, it's the father to my mother's father. Am I making sense?
You have say it again?
My mother's grandfather.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I'm saying my mother's grandfather, I'm talking my mother's paternal side.
Yes.
Yeah. So my mother's grandfather was he was a very family man. So I was one of his great grandchildren. So every level of a great grandchildren, he wanted to know what's happening. To the extent that, let me start with his grandchildren. He wanted them to marry, for example, my uncle to marry at an aunt's house, like that.
Wow. That's
how so he was a connector. He would call my mother and say to my mother, today, Mekuya go me.
Yeah.
So let's say he's got, because he had a lot of children. So all of them have got grandchildren. So he'll call this son, that grandchild, so I was a great grandchild. Do that make sense? So he will call all his grandchildren who have got great grandchildren of the same age and tell them what to do about their children.
Wow.
So I was the same age as my mother's uncles, Rangwanwa, my mother. We were the same age, and their name was Angelina. So he will call his son and call my mother, remember, is a grandchild. He wasn't like direct child to my great grandfather. But any child of the same age within his clan, he called and gave instruction of what needs to happen when.
Wow.
I was among the kids because I was the eldest of the great grandchildren.
Yeah.
Who said I must go to go to what do you call it in English?
What is coming? Circumcision?
Yeah, circumcision school. Yeah.
Yes.
I hated it. I mean, having the influence of Roman Catholic, I did not see how when I come back, I'll be explaining to my friends where I come from. Because what I saw with a lot of women, girls that went in the village where I stayed, they come back, they change names, they don't want to go to school, they're about to get married. And none of those things. Somehow, I've never wanted them live like that in my life. Yeah. And I think maybe the influence of how my father raised us up, I mean, he really did well for us under the circumstances. He used to order us meat from a butcher, which came every Friday for us to have meat on a Sunday. And we didn't have a fridge. We'll put it under some chest of drawers in the dining room because we wanted a cooler place where it can stay until Sunday so that it doesn't get rotten. Yeah. So all those, I think my father really, I mean, we ate Woolworths many years ago when Woolworths didn't have plastic, but it had some those khaki. Yes, yeah. The brown paper. The brown one. Yes, that's when we ate lettuce when everybody didn't know what it is. Cucumber when nobody knew what it was. I didn't know the name, but I knew my father will come back home and tell us what to do with it. And we were surprised that this thing, you don't cook it. How do you eat this thing? We did not understand it. And I think what my father used to do, that's what I tell people, and I don't know whether I'm right. I think he used to follow all the white people in the shops and see what they buy and ask them, what do I do with this at home? And then he comes home, he tells us, what is it that we need to do? So he was very observant. Very observant. And somehow my father admired white people during those times. Yes. Every little thing, he used to say, hey, anything that is not good, he associated. I don't think he even understood what it meant. Yeah, absolutely. Anything that was done by a white person was the greatest thing. Anything that is associated with a black person, no. Substandard. So that's how much, apart. Only when he grew up, he understood. But when he was young, everything he did, I think he was really just, his mentors were white, even if he didn't tell them that you're my mentors. But you know, that is how, I mean, the system was so, I mean, how people were conditioned. I mean, everything you will say in Totamahoa and all those type of things. I know. I know. Anything, my father will say, hey, anything we do that is not right, meanwhile, those things are built by fellow black people under supervision of whites. I know, Tim. He did not know anything better. Only when he started understanding, he really understood. That's why, Maggie, it's so beautiful to tell these stories, because we are recorrecting some of the things. I know. I mean, my father hated this circumcision school because I won't take their kids to circumcision school. Only black people. Only black people. He hated that. I mean, I remember even go Polokwane during those times. We used to go Moria. Actually, school will go Moria, and then we'll go to Holiday Inn. If you remember the Holiday Inn in Polokwane, used to have a buffet. And not a lot of black people were not allowed to go to that buffet. But we used to go, and when we arrived, our names were there. My father used to drive Valiant. Yes, that, and also Valiant for, I think he bought it from some white people or what, I don't know. But we were so respected by driving that car, but I didn't know what it was. But you know, Maggie, now that you're saying that, I think I remember
I remember the famous Ratau from Glen-Cowie.
Yes.
I remember, now that you're talking about that, it comes back to memory.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
my father was, he knew how to, my father, he wouldn't, I still want to see a man in the world, even my husband that I love so dearly. I still want to see someone who can dress up like my father.
Yeah, if you go Muribani and then you are Bucharla Musivan Taterata what Glen-Cowie, they'll say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Ratau from Glen-Cowie is very known. I really can relate to that. Now, tell me, was the famous athlete Ratau not your brother?
He was my cousin. He wasn't a dancer. He was a dancer.
Not but there's a famous athlete called Ratau. Hey, he was a good athlete during school competitions. I can't remember what's his name, but we just know him as Mr. Ratau. If he was the whole neighbor was led by him when it comes to athletics.
Yeah, no, we've got a lot of Ratau's good neighbor, but the other one was a dancer. The other one with Peter used to dance very well. He was a good dancer. Wow. And then most Ratau's had businesses. That's another thing.
Yes.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I think my father was among the people that really inspired people in business.
Mm.
And, where was I now? The stories, so many stories, otherwise you're going to be...
Yeah, you were talking about he owned a Valiant and he was...
Yeah, then we went we used to go to town, to this place called at Holiday Inn, because we'll go for the buffet. And when we arrived there, we were well known, but to my surprise, only now I remember, there was not a lot of black people going there. Mm. Very few. Mm. But I didn't know that there's something wrong. Mm. Golden Egg, if you remember Golden Egg,
yes.
Before it became Golden Egg, I don't know what it was called, but when you got into that restaurant, when you come in, white people were sitting in front, and then you go right at the back, that's where you found a lot of black people sitting. I didn't have a problem with that. I just loved the fact that we are together. And my father didn't see anything wrong. He just loved the fact that we're going into a place where also white people goes, but even though we were not sitting with them.
Sure.
He liked things like those. I remember Wimpy. If you know Wimpy many years ago, black people we used to buy at the window. Yes. And I didn't see anything wrong. I just love the fact that we are buying and I can see a white person sitting there. So those things, we didn't see anything wrong in them, and especially my father, because he also believed that anything that is done by a white person was a good thing. So to us, seeing a white person anywhere was just enough. And it was enough to confirm to us that whatever we are doing, it's right.
So when did you move then to Jane's and why?
Yeah. So and then my father waited for the new Glen-Cowie.
Yes.
The new stand.
Yes.
We were waiting to move there, but they were not declaring the place. It was taking too long.
Yes.
And then we had a business called Mahane.
Yes.
We had a business there, and we were traveling every day, and it was a long drive every day. So my father decided to buy a land Ga-Mphahlele, and we built there. And then when I was doing we moved there when I was doing what I call Form 2. My younger brother, who was the sixth one in the family, was born. And then I was now in Form 2, Kukadian. So Ga-Mphahlele, I basically did not stay much. Because I always went there during holidays, because I was at high school, at boarding school, and then I left. I've never applied for any of the black universities. My husband, my dad refused. The only two universities I applied was Cape Town and Vets. They both accepted me, but I had to go do some preaching course.
Yes. I see. And let's go back to high school. How did you perform in your high school?
Oh, so I was a next child. I I was a mathematic child.
Yeah.
My father wanted me to be a medical doctor. That's what he wanted. So I performed very well. So at school, there was a class of maths and a class of typing, and a class of history and a class of biblical studies. So I was a class of maths and history. We didn't have physics or chemistry at our school. So if we had a science, so some kids, that's why in Guardian, when we are at grade, what we call Form 3, we reduced the number drastically because we did not have accounting. So those kids that are really interested in BCom, they left the school. And those that really felt they wanted to do science subjects, they left the school to other schools that can provide the stream. So my father were attached to the school. It didn't matter what subject we had. Those kids whose parents loved the school, they did not. You couldn't budge to them and say, I wanted to change. I mean, I really liked commerce. I liked commerce, but because the school didn't do it, I dropped it out. I left it there. And then I continued with math. So I performed very well. Actually, if you remember, when we applied to a university, you had to go to the magistrate and get a stamp and get some letter and some sorts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what really ruined my career because I always wanted to be a social worker. I had seen a lady driving a car. I don't know whether you know Tsidinyama.
Yes.
The cousin.
Yes.
Cousin with it.
Okay.
That lady did, what's her name? Social worker, a very pretty lady.
Yeah.
She used to work for us Kukuni. I just like the fact that she's driving a car. So I knew this is what I wanted to do.
She influenced you.
Yes, I was so influenced to go into social work. But anyway, I liked helping. When I was young, I've always liked to support, assist. My father used to buy us tin stuff, what you call tin stuff, like your beef, your fish in the tins. And I go to the house next door, I find they've got mealie meal, but they don't have something to eat with. I'll go and take one tin in the house and come and give it to them. Wow. That's how I used to be. I just didn't like someone suffering around me. I just had this thing. I don't know why I got it, but I know I got it from my father and my mother because they've always been helpful. I mean, we had a car when anyone didn't have a car, which means our car became like an ambulance around the village. And we didn't make people to pay. We had, my mother used to do a lot of piece jobs, and we used to sell coal at home. If people don't have money and it's cold, they will come and ask. They will pay when they get the money. Some of them wouldn't even get the money back. And I don't remember my mother even reprimanding them. So I thought, I think how I grew up, being supportive, having a giving heart, it's something that I grew up with. And I think another thing, I grew from a loving family. I was loved. I told you that I was a great grandchildren, both sides, my father's side and my mother's side. Somehow, I was just special.
So your dad, actually, what made your dad successful is that business that he started.
Yes.
So you must have been very good in managing money.
Yeah, he was very good. If I tell you at our home there was this little money box, it wasn't that much a money box. It was a little case, a little aluminium case. Any cent, if he gives you a lift or anything, he will put that cent in there. He even bought at some stage he bought a truck, and then that truck he used every Friday. He will come home. He became like a what you call today, you call a logistic company, but it was just one little truck that helps people to carry their stuff from wherever, Joburg. But my father, he knew any place in Johannesburg. I mean, everywhere. Then they paid him until he started building his own shop. My mother did all the bricks for that shop. We used to do that. Then we built it, we finished it, and then he started buying little stock, and if he finds sale anywhere, he buys until he started opening. I mean, we had a very fantastic business going. Thanks to apartheid when it opened up and opening up for new Chinese shops to come into the country. Unfortunately, like any other business of that type, it couldn't survive. But it really raised us very, very well.
Wow.
So I passed my matric. Then I finished. Then I went. I was supposed to go to Wits or Cape Town.
Yes.
But you remember, 1983, it wasn't great times for universities. There was lots of boycotts. A lot of things were happening.
Yeah, in the 80s.
I thought, if I go to Cape Town, how am I going to come back? Because every 6 months, kids were coming home from university. They were closed down. And then Wits, he didn't understand. Both the universities, he didn't understand this thing of me not going straight to study a degree, but starting some course for the first 6 months. That made my father not wanting to be part of it. But someone called Magistrate Mangena, who was signing my forms, said to my father, no, this child can't go and do this 6 months course. He's very brilliant. He must just go to Medunsa and go and study medicine.
Yes.
At that time, I hadn't applied.
Yeah.
I went to Medunsa. My father drove me straight to Medunsa the following day for me to go and apply. Fortunately, when I got there, because I did not have science subjects, the only science subject I had was maths. So I didn't qualify for that medicine. I was so happy.
Yeah.
And then my father drove me straight to the following day to University of the North. You know, my father stood in the queue for me and applied for me. And then I got into BSc Pharmacy. I studied BSc Pharmacy. I tell you, the first 6 months was horrible. I did not like physics. I did not like chemistry. The only thing I could relate to was maths.
Your story is very similar to my story.
Yes. The only thing I could understand was maths in the class and the other stuff that I was studying. I phoned my dad. I actually walked out of a class. I phoned my father. And I said, Tata, this thing, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm even going to make it. This thing is hard. But anyway, even if it wasn't hard, I hated it. I hated it with passion. I went home. My father said, now, what do you want to do? I said to my father, allow me to do anything. And I promise you, one day I'll become a doctor of something. Whatever I'm going to do when I love it.
Yeah.
He said, what are you going to do? My father hated teaching. He didn't like it. But I said to him, allow me to do teaching and let me pass. We are 7 at home, Papa. I don't think I can allow myself to study any other hard degree, because if I do that, it's going to make me to stay at the university for a long time, and it's not fair for my other 6 siblings. I'll rather do something, I pass, and I'll go and study something on my own that I love and I can pay for myself. And indeed, I did that. My father allowed me to do that. I did that. I did maths. I did education, and then... Where? At University of the North.
Oh, okay. You stayed at the university and then changed.
I ended up going back to Teplo, and fortunately, when I went back, I met my husband now, but then I met my boy. I met someone.
Yes.
When I went for the second time, he was finishing his industrial psychology. And I think that's where my love for HR started, because they used to come into his room to discuss, to discuss assignments. And as they were talking, I thought, this is what I've been wanting to do. When they were discussing labor, the stuff, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew it just sounded very interesting. But I didn't tell him, because then he was just a boyfriend to me, not a husband yet. But in my head, I knew if I understood, because remember with us, we didn't know a lot of professionals. The only thing you knew was law, BCom, medicine, and social work.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing called industrial psychology. I didn't even know what it was. Yeah, but as he was studying B.Admin, and one of his measures was industrial psychology. So that's when I got to understand what is industrial psychology. And then I finished. My boyfriend also finished. I mean, when we met, he was in his last year, and then he came back to study his industrial psych honors part-time. I was doing my second year, my third year, but we were still dating. And later, when I was doing my last year, we had our first child out of wedlock.
Yeah.
Thank God we got married. And then, he's still amazing. I'll talk about him later.
Yes.
Let me steal the show when I talk about my husband.
Yes. And tell me, your degree was called what?
It was called BA Education.
But you hated teaching.
I hated it, but somehow I think one of the things I got to learn when I grew up, I don't know, because we were raised by hard workers. So anything you do, my mother and my father used to say, if you don't have option, I hated going to Komashimongo Town.
Yeah.
But my mother used to say, if you don't have option, you have to find a way to love this. So somehow they have instilled something in me that whether I don't like it, if I don't have an option at that time, I've got no way out. I have to develop that passion for that moment. And I can tell you my teaching years has been such an amazing experience. I loved it. I taught for 7 years. So I finished my degree. I came back and I also did my BA Ed for 2 years part-time, like my husband who was studying part-time. So I also got my honors part-time. And when I was teaching, I registered for psychology. Immediately first year when I finished.
Where did you go to teach? Anyway, we'll come to that when we discuss your corporate life. But you also, so you were also influenced by your husband your boyfriend then to also do honors part-time.
Yes. No, I think. Let me tell you one thing. I've always been very considerate. I come from a family of 7, and with the old general dealers, you knew that Baba Kupulukwane will take their stock and give it to our fathers. The only money really our parents had was the margins they make out of what they sell. Everything else, they still had to take it back to where it belongs. Really. So I was very considerate because my father really involved me a lot into the shop. So I could understand how much we owe, how much of the stock we have in the shop doesn't belong to us.
Wow. So you are one of those who can confirm for us that this thing of Africans not encouraging family businesses where children can learn from is actually holding us back.
Yeah, no, it's really, really holding us back. My father taught me entrepreneurship many years ago. I enjoyed business. When school closes, my father, it was as if his top talent is coming back.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I had ideas. I'll come Christmas time, I'll say, when I multiply, like when we make, when we buy stuff, and then I will add maybe additional 50 cents, and I'll tell people you are getting sugar for free. That's how creative I am.
Wow. Wonderful stuff.
And he comes back, the sugar is finished. Why? No, Papa, you remember, this dress was 11 Rand 20. I made it 11 Rand 70. So that I say to people, you buy this dress, you get this for free. I never knew where I got all these things. I remember my father saying to my husband when we got married that if you want to know what a businesswoman look like, you are marrying the best businesswoman ever. And I never understood what it meant. And my father was somehow the whole family, we are actually very entrepreneurial. My father and my mother are very, very entrepreneurial.
Yeah, as I said, many people from the area there will, if you mention Taterata, if it's the same person that was known in that region, the way we grew up knowing him, he was a great businessman.
And let me tell you, he was a man of excellence, a man of anything he did. We used to clean even chappies in the streets, clean streets.
Wow.
Clean the boxes where they sit, how they sit. The shop was the cleanest. I mean, one day when we meet, I'm going to bring you the dinner set that I got from my father's shop many, many years ago.
Wow.
It still looks amazing. People from everywhere used to come to that shop when they want smart things for their own houses. So
Beautiful.
I was raised by a man of style, a man of excellence, a man of stature.
Thanks for running away to Gauteng and be observant and bring back home the ideas.
Yes, no. I mean, for us, and I tell people that apartheid was the worst thing that could have happened to anyone.
Yeah.
But those who were naive, some of them used it to their advantage.
Wonderful. Maggie, let's hold it there, and when we come, beautiful story, this one. When we come back, we're going to build on that, but we're going to take it to your the beginning of your corporate life where you started as a teacher. I'm very interested to hear how that happened. We'll be back just now.
In my career, Sam, I think I applied for a job once.
Wow.
The teaching career, my father has always been, he always liked teachers that, there were those teachers that dressed up well, looked after themselves very well. They really made teaching a true corporate world.
Absolutely.
And those were my father's friends.
Wow.
My father will be close to teachers like those. So he was close to this teacher known by Mr. Matabati, Ludwig Matabati.
Wow.
And my husband and I, we moved to Luwahumu because he was working at Luwahumu. And then I finished, I passed. Now, the following day, I had to go and teach. I didn't know where I was going to go.
Let's continue when we come back from a short break.
Yes.
Lovely.